You were not supposed to hear this until the exact moment you almost gave up. That strange heaviness you have been carrying lately is not something you imagined, and deep down you already know that. The silence around you has felt different these past few weeks, almost louder somehow, like the world kept moving while something inside you quietly stopped. You still went to work, still answered people with small smiles, still said, "I'm fine," without thinking about it. But there were moments no one saw. Moments where you sat alone in your apartment with the television running only to fill the emptiness. Moments where you stared at your phone close to midnight hoping someone would finally reach out first. Moments where exhaustion followed you into every room no matter how much sleep you got. And the hardest part was not even the loneliness itself. It was the feeling that nobody could really tell how tired you had become inside. You started wondering if maybe life had quietly moved on without you. Maybe that opportunity was never going to happen. Maybe those prayers were never going to be answered. Maybe you waited too long. Maybe you missed your moment already. That thought has crossed your mind more than once lately, especially during those late nights when the room feels too quiet and your thoughts begin replaying everything you tried not to think about during the day. You remember that one evening when you stayed parked outside your own home for nearly 20 minutes because you did not have the energy to walk inside and face another night feeling emotionally empty. You remember scrolling through old messages, rereading conversations from people who slowly disappeared without explanation. You remember looking at your reflection in the bathroom mirror wondering when exactly you became this exhausted version of yourself. But something strange kept happening too. In the middle of all that silence, little moments kept finding you. Certain words appearing repeatedly. Certain memories returning for no reason. A random feeling telling you to pause before making a decision. A strange calm arriving right when panic should have taken over. You brushed those moments aside because they did not make sense at the time. You told yourself you were just overthinking everything because disappointment has a way of making people doubt even the smallest signs of hope. But what if the silence was never empty? What if something was happening underneath all the waiting that you could not see yet? Because the truth is, there are some seasons in life where answers do not arrive loudly. They arrive quietly, almost hidden beneath ordinary moments most people ignore. And lately, your life has been filled with moments like that. The delayed plans, the closed doors, the sudden distance between you and certain people. The feeling that something important was shifting behind the scenes while you stood there confused, wondering why everything felt stuck. You thought you were being forgotten, but what if you were actually being pulled away from something that would have broken you later? What if the delay was not punishment? What if it was protection you could not recognize yet? The strange part was that nobody around you seemed to notice the change happening inside you. From the outside, your life still looked normal enough. You still got up in the morning, still drove the same roads, still stood in grocery store lines under bright fluorescent lights pretending your mind was not somewhere else entirely. But internally something had shifted, and you could feel it most during the quietest parts of the day. Especially during those moments right before falling asleep when the distractions faded and the silence finally had room to speak. That was when the questions returned. Why had so many things almost worked out only to suddenly fall apart at the last second? Why did certain people enter your life so intensely only to disappear without warning? Why did every time you finally gathered enough hope to believe things were changing, something unexpected happened that pushed everything backward again? You tried to stay practical about it. You told yourself life was just difficult sometimes. You blamed timing, bad luck, exhaustion, maybe even yourself. But there was one memory you could not shake no matter how hard you tried. A few months ago you stood in your kitchen holding your phone long after midnight, reading a message you almost sent someone who once meant everything to you. You rewrote the words 3 different times. You stared at the screen for nearly an hour, wondering if reconnecting would finally fix the emptiness you had been carrying. Then, for reasons you still cannot fully explain, you put the phone down and deleted the message entirely. At the time, it felt like fear. It felt like another missed opportunity. But later you learned things about that situation that changed everything. Patterns you never saw before. Truths hidden beneath what once looked perfect. And ever since then, a quiet thought has followed you around that maybe not every closed door was actually a loss. Still, even with that realization, the waiting has worn you down. There are days when you feel emotionally disconnected from your own future. Days when it feels easier to stop expecting anything good than risk another disappointment. You have become careful with hope. Careful with attachment. Careful with believing things can truly change. Even your routines started feeling heavier. You noticed it during small moments most people would never think twice about, like sitting alone in the parking lot outside work staring at the steering wheel before driving home, or standing under hot water in the shower trying to wash away a kind of exhaustion sleep never fixes. And lately the silence has felt almost intentional. Not cruel, not empty, just strangely intentional. As if something has been holding you still while you keep trying to move ahead before you are ready. There have been moments where you almost sensed it. A calm arriving in the middle of panic. A sudden instinct telling you not to force a decision. A strange pull to slow down when every part of you wanted immediate answers. Most people ignore those moments because they do not arrive dramatically. They arrive quietly, almost hidden beneath ordinary life. But your spirit has noticed them even when your mind tried to explain them away. Deep down you already know there is a reason this season feels different from every other difficult season you survived before. Something about this. Waiting feels less like punishment and more like preparation, even if you are not fully ready to admit that yet. You can feel it now more than before, that strange distance between who you used to be and who you are becoming. It is subtle during the daytime when your schedule keeps your mind occupied, but at night it becomes impossible to ignore. Something inside you no longer connects to the life you once tried so hard to hold together. Places that once felt familiar now feel emotionally empty. Conversations feel thinner. Even laughter sometimes sounds distant to you, like you are standing slightly outside the moment while everyone else moves normally around you. And perhaps the most confusing part is that you cannot fully explain why. Nothing dramatic happened overnight. There was no single moment where everything collapsed. Instead, it was slower than that. A gradual unraveling. A quiet awareness growing stronger every time another plan failed, another relationship faded, another opportunity disappeared right before reaching your hands. You began carrying disappointment so consistently that eventually it stopped feeling shocking and started feeling expected. That is what exhausted you the most. Not the pain itself, but the repetition of it. The cycle of hoping carefully, only to watch something drift away again. A few weeks ago, you found yourself awake at nearly 3 a.m, sitting on the edge of your bed with the lights off, staring at the faint glow coming through your apartment window from the street outside. The entire room was silent except for the sound of the air conditioner turning on and off. And for a moment, you wondered if maybe everyone else had figured out something about life that you somehow missed. Because no matter how hard you tried to stay positive, there was always this invisible weight following you. You started questioning your own instincts. Questioning your own timing, even questioning whether your life was quietly moving in the wrong direction while you kept pretending everything would eventually work itself out. But then something happened that you still think about. The next morning while rushing out the door, you accidentally knocked an old photo from a shelf onto the floor. It was from years ago, from a season of your life you once begged to return to. Back then you believed those were your happiest days. Yet as you stood there holding the picture, another memory surfaced beside it. The anxiety you carried during that time. The loneliness you hid from everyone. The pressure you lived under silently every single day. Suddenly you realized something unsettling. You had not actually wanted your old life back. You only wanted the version of yourself that still believed things could get better. And maybe that is what this entire season has been trying to rebuild inside you. Not your past, not old relationships, not lost opportunities, but your ability to trust again without forcing outcomes that were never truly meant for you. Because looking back now, there were moments where you pushed desperately for things that later revealed cracks you could not see at first. Certain people who once felt essential eventually became sources of confusion. Certain paths that looked perfect from a distance would have drained the life out of you if they had worked out exactly when you wanted them to. But during those moments of waiting, you could not understand any of it. All you felt was silence, delay, distance. Yet the deeper truth has been quietly following you this entire time. The things leaving your life were not always being taken from you. Some of them were being removed before they could take more from you than you realized. There are moments when life becomes so quiet that even small things begin to feel strangely important. You have been living inside one of those moments for a while now, whether you fully realized it or not. The strange pauses during your day. The sudden memories that return without warning. The feeling that something is trying to get your attention without speaking directly. At first you ignored it because you thought exhaustion was making you emotional. You blamed stress. You blamed lack of sleep. You blamed disappointment that had slowly piled up over the years. But lately it has become harder to dismiss the feeling that something deeper has been unfolding beneath the surface of your ordinary life. You noticed it again last Thursday night while driving home after another long day that felt emotionally heavier than it should have. Traffic lights reflected across your windshield while the radio played softly in the background, but your mind kept drifting somewhere else entirely. You found yourself thinking about how many times you almost forced situations that clearly were not bringing peace into your life. Relationships you tried to hold together long after they stopped feeling honest. Opportunities you chased simply because you were afraid of falling behind everyone else. You spent so much time believing that every closed door meant failure that you never considered another possibility. Maybe some doors stayed closed because they were leading somewhere your spirit already knew was wrong for you even when your emotions could not accept it yet. That thought followed you all the way home. And later that night, while standing in your kitchen pouring a glass of water in complete silence, another realization quietly settled into your chest. The moments that changed your life most were rarely loud when they happened. They were subtle at first, almost invisible. A delayed phone call, a sudden feeling telling you not to go somewhere, a plan falling apart unexpectedly, a conversation ending before it could pull you deeper into confusion. At the time, those moments felt frustrating, sometimes even heartbreaking. But looking back now, there is a pattern forming that you can no longer ignore. Every time you thought your life was falling apart completely, something hidden was actually redirecting you. You just could not see it while you were standing inside the disappointment. And perhaps that has been the hardest part of this season for you. Not the waiting itself, but the inability to understand what the waiting was doing inside you. Because while you were focused on what was not happening, something else quietly was. You were becoming more aware of things you used to overlook, more sensitive to peace, more cautious with who you trust, more aware of how quickly desperation can lead people into situations that drain them. Emotionally, the old version of you would have forced answers by now just to escape uncertainty. But something inside you has changed. Even in your confusion, there is now a strange hesitation before chasing what does not feel right anymore. And that hesitation may have protected you more than you know. There is a reason certain situations suddenly collapsed before becoming permanent. There is a reason some people drifted away despite your effort to keep them close. There is a reason your life slowed down right when you were trying hardest to speed everything up. You thought the silence meant abandonment, but silence can also mean interruption. It can mean something unseen stepping between you and a path that would have wounded you more deeply than you understand right now. And somewhere deep inside, you are beginning to feel that truth even before you fully have the words for it. The hardest part of this entire season has not been the waiting itself. It has been watching yourself slowly lose the version of you that once believed good things would arrive naturally. Somewhere along the way, you became quieter about your hopes, more guarded about your excitement. You stopped telling people what you were praying for because too many things had already slipped away after getting close enough to feel real. And now, even when something good begins appearing in front of you, part of your mind immediately searches for the reason it will eventually disappear. That is what repeated disappointment does to a person over time. It teaches them to expect absence before presence. You noticed it clearly a few days ago while sitting at work pretending to focus on your computer screen while your thoughts drifted somewhere far away again. Everyone around you seemed busy, normal, distracted by everyday life. But inside you, there was this quiet ache that would not leave. A feeling that you had been carrying invisible emotional weight for far too long without ever putting it down. And in that moment, a memory surfaced that you had not thought about in months. You remembered how certain you once were that one particular opportunity would finally change your life. You remember planning everything carefully, imagining how different the future would feel once it happened. You gave it your attention, your hope, your energy. Then almost overnight, the entire situation collapsed without warning. At the time, it felt devastating. You spent weeks replaying every detail in your head, wondering what you did wrong. But recently, you discovered where that path eventually led for the people who stayed connected to it. The stress, the dishonesty, the emotional damage hidden beneath what once looked perfect from the outside. And suddenly you realized something unsettling. If that door had opened when you desperately wanted it to, your life would have moved in a direction that might have broken your peace completely. Yet during the waiting, None of that was visible to you. All you could see was the disappointment of being denied something you thought you needed. That realization has been quietly changing the way you see your past. Because now other memories are starting to look different too. Certain relationships that ended before becoming permanent. Certain delays that forced you to slow down right before making impulsive decisions. Certain moments where plans fell apart so unexpectedly that it almost felt intentional. At the time, you called those moments setbacks. But what if some of them were actually interruptions meant to protect you from becoming trapped inside things your spirit already sensed were wrong? There is a reason you have felt so emotionally conflicted lately. Part of you still wants immediate answers because uncertainty is exhausting. But another part of you is beginning to recognize that rushing towards something simply because you are tired of waiting can create deeper pain than waiting ever could. And perhaps that is why your life has felt suspended between movement and stillness recently. You are no longer the same person who once chased every opportunity just because it appeared. Something inside you has become more sensitive to what drains your peace. Even now, there are situations around you that look good on the surface, but quietly leave you feeling unsettled inside. You notice it in conversations that suddenly feel forced, in places that once excited you but now leave you emotionally empty, in moments where your instincts tell you to pause even when logic says keep moving forward. Those feelings are not random. They are part of the deeper shift happening inside you. The silence has not only been slowing your life down, it has been teaching you how to recognize what truly belongs in it before it arrives. You have spent so much time trying to understand why certain things never worked out that you almost missed what the waiting was doing to you internally. It was changing the way you see yourself. Slowly, quietly, without you realizing it at first. Months ago, your first instinct would have been to chase clarity immediately, to fix things, to force conversations, to hold on tighter whenever something started slipping away. But lately you have noticed a different response forming inside you. Not because you stopped caring, but because something deeper has become tired of fighting for what continuously drains your peace. That realization frightened you at first because you wondered if you were simply becoming emotionally numb. But numbness is not what this is. Numbness disconnects people from feeling entirely. What is happening to you feels different. You are becoming more aware, not less. More sensitive to tension. More aware of what feels forced. More conscious of the subtle difference between something that excites your emotions and something that actually brings peace to your spirit. A few nights ago, you experienced it again. You were lying awake staring at the ceiling long after midnight while your apartment sat completely silent around you. Your phone was only a few feet away, but for once you did not feel the urge to reach for it. No checking old messages. No searching for distractions. No trying to escape your thoughts. You simply lay there listening to the stillness. And in that quiet moment, something unexpected happened. You realized how exhausted you had become from carrying emotional pressure that was never fully yours to hold. Pressure to keep everything together. Pressure to make your life look successful enough. Pressure to force answers before their time because standing in uncertainty made you uncomfortable. But the longer you sat with that thought, the clearer another truth became. Every time you forced something in the past, it eventually left you more drained than fulfilled. Every relationship you chased while ignoring your own uneasiness eventually created confusion. Every opportunity you rushed toward without peace eventually carried hidden stress beneath its surface. Even now, there are moments from your past you can finally see clearly. Situations you once cried over that later revealed consequences you never would have survived emotionally in the state you were in back then. You thought you were ready at the time. But looking back honestly, you were carrying loneliness so deep that you would have accepted almost anything just to feel chosen. And perhaps that is what this season has truly been exposing inside you. Not weakness, but vulnerability created by exhaustion. Because when people grow tired enough emotionally, they begin settling for things that soothe their loneliness temporarily instead of protecting their future long-term. Yet somehow, despite all the confusion, certain paths kept closing before you could fully step into them. Certain people pulled away before becoming permanent. Certain plans collapsed even when you begged for them to stay. At the time it felt cruel. Now it feels strangely precise. As though something beyond your understanding kept interrupting outcomes that would have wounded you more deeply later. And maybe that is why this silence has felt so intense lately. It is not empty silence. It is the kind that forces you to finally hear yourself clearly again. The kind that reveals how much of your life was built around fear of being left behind, fear of being forgotten, fear that if something did not happen soon, it never would. But slowly, almost invisibly, those fears are beginning to lose their control over you. Not because you suddenly have all the answers, but because deep inside you are starting to understand that delayed does not always mean denied. Sometimes it means protected until your spirit is strong enough to recognize what truly deserves access to your life. There comes a point in certain seasons of life where exhaustion stops feeling temporary and starts feeling like part of your identity. That is the place you have quietly been standing in lately. Not completely broken, not completely hopeless, but deeply tired in a way most people around you would never fully understand. You learned how to function while carrying emotional weight. You learned how to answer questions with quick smiles so nobody would ask what was really wrong. You learned how to keep moving even when your spirit felt disconnected from the direction your life was going. But over the past few weeks, something inside you has reached a limit. Not dramatically, quietly, almost invisibly. It happened during ordinary moments no one else would notice. Standing in line at a coffee shop while staring blankly at the menu without caring what you ordered. Sitting in your car after work with your hands resting on the steering wheel because going home felt emotionally heavier than staying parked another 10 minutes. Walking through your apartment at night, feeling like every room somehow echoed with thoughts you kept trying to outrun during the day. And perhaps the hardest truth to admit is that part of you was beginning to lose hope that things would ever truly change. Not because you stopped believing completely, but because disappointment had slowly trained your heart to expect delay every time you started feeling optimistic again. You became afraid of your own expectations, afraid to imagine too much, afraid to trust moments that looked promising because too many things in your past had already disappeared after getting close enough to feel real. There were nights recently when you almost convinced yourself to stop caring altogether, to stop hoping for clarity, stop waiting for answers, stop believing that anything meaningful was still unfolding behind all this silence. And honestly, nobody would have blamed you for feeling that way. You have carried more uncertainty than most people realize. You have watched plans unravel after investing your energy into them completely. You have tried to stay patient while life kept placing you inside situations that felt emotionally unresolved. Yet even during your lowest moments, something strange kept happening. Every time you reached the point where you almost gave up internally, something small interrupted the darkness before it fully consumed you. A sudden memory reminding you how far you have already come. A conversation arriving unexpectedly at the exact moment you needed reassurance. A feeling of calm showing up late at night for reasons you could not explain. Little moments that seemed insignificant at first, yet somehow kept pulling you back from emotional collapse. And now you are beginning to realize those moments may not have been random at all. Because looking back honestly, there were times when you were absolutely convinced a certain path would save you, only to later discover it would have trapped you emotionally. There were people you once begged to stay connected to who eventually revealed patterns that would have exhausted your spirit long term. There were delays that once felt unbearable that now look strangely necessary. The painful truth is that if some doors had opened exactly when you wanted them to, you would have entered them carrying loneliness, fear, and desperation strong enough to blind you from what was unhealthy beneath the surface. But instead, your life slowed down. The silence forced you inward. The waiting exposed what exhaustion had been hiding inside you. And although it felt cruel while you were living through it, you are beginning to sense that something greater was happening underneath the delay. Not punishment, not abandonment, preparation disguised as interruption. Because the version of you standing here now sees things the old version never would have recognized before. The truth is beginning to surface now in ways you cannot ignore anymore. Not all at once, but slowly enough that your spirit can finally handle seeing it clearly. There was a time when you believed every painful delay meant something was wrong with you. You questioned your worth every time someone pulled away. You questioned your future every time another opportunity disappeared unexpectedly. You even questioned your own instincts because life kept unfolding differently than you planned. But recently, pieces of your past have started rearranging themselves into a pattern that looks entirely different than the story you originally told yourself. You saw it clearly last weekend while sitting alone in your apartment on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Rain tapped softly against the windows while an old playlist played in the background, and somehow your mind drifted back through moments you had spent years trying to understand. Certain conversations suddenly sounded different in your memory. Certain endings no longer felt random. And then one realization hit you harder than anything else. Some of the things you cried hardest over were actually exits you would later feel grateful for. At the time, you could not see beyond the loss itself. You only saw what was leaving. But now, standing farther away from those moments emotionally, you can finally recognize what staying connected to them would have cost you. There was one person in particular you once believed you could not live without emotionally. You built entire futures in your mind around their presence. You ignored the uneasiness in your spirit because loneliness made temporary attention feel like destiny. When things eventually fell apart, you blamed yourself for months. You replayed every conversation searching for the exact point where everything changed. Yet later, after distance gave you clarity, you began noticing things you once overlooked completely. The emotional inconsistency, the confusion hidden beneath moments that once felt comforting, the subtle exhaustion you carried every time you tried harder to keep the connection alive. And suddenly the ending that once devastated you started looking less like rejection and more like rescue. That realization changed something deep inside you because it forced you to confront a painful truth. You were not always asking for what was truly good for you. Sometimes you were simply asking for relief from loneliness, relief from uncertainty, relief from the fear that your life was standing still while everyone else moved forward. But there is a difference between what temporarily soothes emotional pain and what genuinely protects your peace long-term. You understand that now in a way you never could before. And perhaps that is why this season has felt so strange. Your life has not only been slowing down externally, your understanding has been transforming internally. The silence gave you distance from things that once clouded your judgment. The waiting exposed how often fear was secretly making decisions for you. Fear of being left behind. Fear of missing your chance. Fear that if something did not happen soon, you would lose your opportunity forever. Yet somehow, despite all your attempts to force certainty, something kept interrupting the outcomes you thought you wanted most. Looking back now, it feels almost impossible to ignore. The delays were too precise. The closed doors happened too consistently right before situations that later revealed hidden complications. The timing of certain endings protected you in ways you still fully do not understand. And perhaps the greatest twist of all is this. The silence you once interpreted as abandonment may have actually been guidance arriving in the only way your exhausted heart would finally listen. Not through loud answers, not through instant miracles, but through interruption, through distance, through delayed outcomes that quietly redirected your life before you stepped too deeply into places your spirit was never meant to stay. What you are beginning to understand now is something most people never fully realize until much later in life. Sometimes the greatest protection arrives disguised as disappointment. Sometimes the unanswered prayer is the answer itself. And perhaps that is why this season changed you so deeply. It forced you to stop measuring every situation by how quickly it satisfied your emotions and start paying attention to what it was doing to your peace. You could feel this shift becoming stronger last night while driving home through the city after another long day. The streets were wet from earlier rain, and traffic moved slowly beneath the glow of red brake lights stretching for blocks ahead of you. Normally, moments like that would frustrate you, but this time your mind drifted somewhere else entirely. You started thinking about how different your life could have been if certain doors had opened exactly when you wanted them to. At first, that thought made your chest tighten, because part of you still mourned those old versions of the future you once imagined so vividly. But then another realization quietly followed behind it. Many of those dreams were built from a version of yourself that was emotionally exhausted, deeply lonely, and desperate for certainty. You were trying to escape pain more than you were seeking alignment. That changes everything when you finally admit it honestly. Because loneliness has a way of making temporary comfort feel permanent. It can make unhealthy situations appear meaningful simply because they temporarily quiet the fear of being alone. And there were moments in your past where you came dangerously close to building your future around things that only looked good because you were emotionally tired enough to accept less than what truly brought peace into your life. Looking back now, you can see signs you completely ignored back then. The anxiety you felt around certain people but dismissed because you feared losing them. the constant pressure attached to opportunities you thought would save your future, the emotional confusion that followed situations you kept forcing because you believed waiting any longer meant failure. But real peace never required that much pretending from you. Real alignment never left you emotionally drained every single day. And deep down, your spirit knew that long before your mind was willing to accept it. That is why the interruptions became unavoidable. That is why plans kept stalling right before becoming permanent. That is why certain connections suddenly dissolved despite all your effort to hold on to them. At the time, you interpreted those moments as evidence that life was working against you. Now they look entirely different. Now they look like rescue arriving before damage became irreversible. There is one moment in particular you cannot stop thinking about lately. A conversation from almost a year ago where someone looked you directly in the eyes and promised everything you desperately wanted to hear at that stage of your life. Back then you believed that moment meant your waiting was finally over. Yet only weeks later, everything collapsed unexpectedly and left you emotionally devastated for months. But recently you learned truths about that situation that completely changed how you see it now. Patterns of dishonesty. Emotional instability hidden beneath carefully chosen words. Suddenly, the ending that once broke your heart became the very thing that protected your future. And perhaps that is the deeper reason this silence has lasted longer than you expected. You were not simply waiting for external answers. You were becoming someone capable of recognizing the difference between what temporarily fills emotional emptiness and what genuinely deserves a permanent place in your life. The delay was never meant to punish you. It was meant to slow you down long enough to save you from attaching your future to things your exhausted heart once mistook for destiny. Something inside you has become quieter lately, but not in the hopeless way it used to feel before. This quietness feels different. It is less like emotional exhaustion and more like awareness slowly settling into places inside you that used to be ruled by panic. You noticed it this morning during a simple moment that most people would never think twice about. You were standing by the kitchen window holding a cup of coffee while early sunlight pushed through the clouds outside. And for the first time in a long while, your mind was not racing toward what was missing. There was still uncertainty in your life. Still unanswered questions. Still situations that had not fully made sense yet. But underneath all of it, there was this strange feeling that something important had already shifted internally even before your external life completely reflected it. Months ago, silence made you anxious because you interpreted every delay as evidence that nothing was changing. But now you are beginning to understand that some transformations happen so quietly, you only recognize them after they have already reshaped you completely. You can see it in the way you respond to things now. Certain conversations that once would have emotionally consumed you no longer carry the same control over your mind. Situations that once triggered desperation now create pause instead. You have become more careful about what you allow close to your spirit, more protective of your peace. And perhaps most importantly, you no longer feel the same urge to force certainty just because uncertainty feels uncomfortable. That change did not happen overnight. It was built slowly through every delayed answer, every lonely night, every moment where silence forced you to sit with yourself honestly instead of escaping into distractions. Looking back now, you realize this season stripped away more than just unhealthy attachments. It exposed how deeply fear had influenced your decisions for years. Fear of not being chosen. Fear of being forgotten. Fear that your life was somehow falling behind everyone else around you. Those fears once made you chase things your spirit quietly resisted. They made you ignore exhaustion simply because you were desperate for something to finally work out. But now there is a different kind of awareness growing inside you. You can feel it every time something looks good externally, but leaves you unsettled internally. You can feel it when certain opportunities appear impressive on the surface, yet quietly drain your energy the closer you move toward them. That sensitivity is not weakness. It is discernment developing through experience. A few evenings ago, you found yourself scrolling through old photos on your phone, revisiting seasons of life you once romanticized in your memory. At first, the pictures made you nostalgic. Smiling faces, places you once loved, moments that appeared perfect frozen on a screen. But as you kept looking, another layer of memory surfaced beneath the images themselves. The anxiety you carried during those periods. The emotional confusion you constantly tried to hide. The loneliness that followed you even in rooms full of people. Suddenly you understood something powerful. Your mind had spent so long mourning what was lost that it forgot how much hidden heaviness you were actually carrying back then. And perhaps that is why certain doors never reopened, no matter how desperately you wanted them to. You were asking to return to versions of your life that looked comforting in hindsight, but would no longer fit the person you are becoming now. Because the truth is, you are no longer the same person who entered this season of waiting. The silence changed you. The delays refined you. The disappointments forced you to stop building your future around temporary emotional relief and start paying attention to what genuinely protects your peace long term. And even though you still do not fully know what is ahead, deep inside you are beginning to trust that some things had to fall apart exactly when they did, so you would finally become capable of recognizing what truly belongs in your life when it finally arrives. You are finally beginning to see that this season was never only about what you lost. It was about what you were becoming while everything familiar was being stripped away. For a long time you measured your progress by visible outcomes. You thought peace would arrive once the right opportunity appeared, once the right person stayed, once the uncertainty finally disappeared. But now you are discovering something deeper. Real peace does not begin when everything around you becomes perfect. It begins the moment fear stops controlling every decision you make. And quietly, almost without noticing, that shift has already started happening inside you. You felt it again earlier this week while walking through the grocery store after work. It was nothing dramatic. Just an ordinary evening under bright fluorescent lights with people rushing past you distracted by their own lives. Yet somewhere between grabbing things off the shelves and standing in line waiting to pay, you suddenly realized your mind was no longer obsessing over the same questions that used to consume you constantly. The need for immediate answers had softened. The panic that once followed uncertainty was quieter now. And for the first time in a long while, you felt present instead of emotionally trapped somewhere between regret and fear. That moment may seem small to someone else, but to you it meant everything because it revealed how much healing had already happened beneath the surface. Months ago, your entire emotional state depended on whether external situations moved the way you wanted them to. One delayed message could ruin your whole night. One unexpected disappointment could make you question your entire future. But now there is more space inside you. More stillness, more awareness. You are learning how to exist without forcing life to prove your worth every single day. That transformation did not come easily. It was built through every lonely evening you survived, every unanswered question you endured, every moment where silence forced you to sit with yourself honestly instead of escaping into temporary distractions. And perhaps that is why certain things had to remain delayed longer than you expected. Because if everything you wanted had arrived immediately, you would never have developed the discernment you carry now. You would have accepted things simply because they arrived quickly. You would have confused attention with alignment, comfort with peace, excitement with destiny. But now you can feel the difference. There are situations that still look appealing on the surface, yet something deeper inside you quietly says no. There are people who once would have emotionally pulled you in completely, but now your spirit notices the instability beneath the charm almost immediately. That awareness was born through experience, through heartbreak, through disappointment, through silence that once felt unbearable but slowly sharpened your ability to recognize what truly deserves access to your life. Looking back now, you can see that many of the delays were actually creating distance between you and versions of yourself that no longer matched where your life is heading. The fearful version, the desperate version, the version willing to settle simply because loneliness made waiting feel impossible. That version of you is slowly fading now. Not perfectly, not all at once, but enough for you to finally understand why certain things never stayed. They were connected to an older version of you that this season was quietly teaching you to outgrow. And maybe that is why your spirit feels both tired and peaceful at the same time lately. Tired from everything you survived emotionally, yet peaceful because somewhere deep inside you are finally beginning to trust that not every interruption was meant to harm you. Some were meant to guide you away from futures your exhausted heart once mistook for answers. The strange thing about healing is that it rarely announces itself when it arrives. Most of the time it enters quietly through ordinary moments you almost overlook. A deeper breath than usual while driving home at sunset. A night where your mind finally rests without replaying old conversations for hours. A moment where you realize someone who once consumed your thoughts no longer holds the same emotional power over you anymore. These shifts seem small from the outside, yet they reveal something important happening underneath the surface of your life. And lately, those quiet shifts have been appearing around you more often than before. You noticed it clearly a few nights ago while sitting near your apartment window after midnight watching distant headlights move across the street below. Months ago, silence like that would have unsettled you instantly. You would have reached for distractions, searched for reassurance, or spiraled into overthinking about everything still unresolved in your life. But this time was different. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt calm. Not because every question had finally been answered, but because something inside you had stopped demanding immediate certainty in order to feel safe. That realization stayed with you longer than you expected because it showed you how much this season transformed your relationship with waiting itself. Before, waiting always felt like punishment, a sign you were forgotten, a sign something was wrong. But now you are beginning to understand that waiting can also become protection, redirection, even preparation for things your spirit was not ready to carry before. Looking back honestly, there were times when receiving what you wanted too early would have overwhelmed you emotionally. You would have attached your identity to unstable situations simply because you were tired of feeling alone. You would have ignored warning signs because desperation makes people accept almost anything that temporarily relieves uncertainty. But now there is more wisdom inside your pauses, more awareness in your choices, more peace in your discernment. You can feel the difference every time your instincts gently pull you away from situations that once would have consumed you completely. And perhaps the most meaningful part of this transformation is that it happened quietly while you thought nothing was changing at all. During the nights you believed your life was standing still, your spirit was learning how to recognize peace instead of chasing pressure. During the delays you hated, your understanding deepened. During the loneliness, your dependence on temporary validation slowly loosened its grip over your heart. There is a reason certain things no longer attract you the way they once did. A reason some conversations now leave you emotionally exhausted instead of excited. A reason your spirit hesitates when something appears good externally but feels heavy internally. You are no longer responding from the same wounded version of yourself that entered this season. The silence refined you. The waiting sharpened your awareness. The disappointments exposed what fear used to convince you to tolerate. And now, even though your future is still unfolding, there is a growing sense inside you that not everything needs to be forced anymore. Some things will arrive naturally without manipulation, panic, or emotional exhaustion attached to them. You are finally beginning to trust that what genuinely belongs in your life will not require you to abandon your peace in order to keep it. And perhaps that has been the deeper lesson hidden underneath this entire season all along. Not simply learning how to survive uncertainty, but learning how to recognize the difference between what truly aligns with your spirit and what only temporarily comforts your fear of being alone. Maybe that is why this message reached you now instead of months ago when your heart was still trying to force answers out of fear. Back then you were searching for immediate relief more than real peace. You wanted certainty quickly because uncertainty made you feel forgotten. You wanted things to work out exactly the way you imagined because disappointment had exhausted you emotionally for so long. But if you are honest with yourself now, you can finally see that the version of you from those earlier days would not have recognized the deeper meaning hidden underneath all the delays. You would have called every interruption failure, every closed door rejection, every silence abandonment. Yet standing here now, after everything you survived internally, something feels different. Not perfect, not fully resolved, just different in a quieter and more grounded way. You can feel it during ordinary moments when your mind no longer rushes to worst-case scenarios automatically. You can feel it when you wake up in the morning and the weight on your chest feels lighter than it once did. You can feel it in the way your spirit now hesitates before attaching itself to situations that once would have consumed you emotionally without question. The waiting changed you in ways you are only beginning to notice. It slowed your impulses. It sharpened your discernment. It taught you how to recognize peace instead of chasing pressure disguised as opportunity. And perhaps most importantly, it taught you that loneliness can distort judgment when people become desperate enough for comfort. There were things you once begged to keep that now quietly make sense why they left. There were plans you mourned losing that would have exhausted you long term if they had succeeded exactly when you wanted them to. You see that now with a clarity you could not access before because pain was too loud at the time. But distance changes perspective. Silence reveals patterns. Time exposes truths emotions once hid from you. And lately life has been showing you those truths gently instead of all at once. Earlier tonight, while walking back to your apartment under the soft glow of streetlights, you caught yourself doing something you had not done in a very long time. You were not replaying old regrets. You were not mentally chasing unanswered questions. You were simply present. The air felt cool. The city sounded distant and calm around you. And for a brief moment, without even trying, you felt safe inside your own life again. That moment mattered more than you realize because peace like that cannot be forced artificially. It arrives quietly after enough internal healing has taken place, after enough illusions fall away, after enough delayed answers slowly reveal why they were delayed in the first place. Your life may still contain uncertainty right now, but uncertainty no longer feels like proof that you are abandoned. It feels more like a space where something meaningful is still unfolding beyond what you can currently see. And perhaps that has been true this entire time. Perhaps the silence was never empty. Perhaps the waiting was never punishment. Perhaps every interruption, every delay, every unexpected ending was quietly guiding you away from futures that looked comforting temporarily, but would have slowly disconnected you from yourself long term. You do not need to force every answer anymore. You do not need to chase every door that closes. Some things leave because they cannot follow you into the next version of your life. And some things arrive only after your spirit becomes calm enough to recognize them clearly when they finally do.